Test match. India have won the series. They're going to get back for two. India at home. Lords goes wild.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of the 81 All Out podcast. This is your host, Siddhartha Vaidyanathan, and I'm joined today by two cricket writers, two writers who I really admire, and writers who put a lot of thought into the words they use, how they frame their descriptions of cricket, how they frame an argument. And even though very often I don't agree with some things they say, I really admire the logic and the way in which the argument is structured. And that for me is really important. Let me introduce Karthik Krishnaswamy, star writer for Cricinfo. I'm sure many of you have read what Karthik writes, has been doing a stellar job covering cricket over many, many years. Welcome, Karthik. Thank you so much for joining.
Good to be here, Sidvi, and though not so good once you said you don't agree with everything I write.
I think that's actually a badge of honor, as Ravi Shastri once put it, because if I agree with everything you write, then after a point it will become boring. So come on, I think you should take it as a compliment.
Absolutely. Wear it like a badge.
Wear it like a badge. Also joining us today, 81 All Out regular, Kartikeya Date, who is at Cricketing View on Twitter. Hi Kartikeya, welcome again.
Hi.
I didn't mention Karthik's Twitter ID with Twitter or X or whatever you call it now. It's I'll link it along with when I post the podcast. I don't want to get it wrong when I say it now. So anyway, we are here today to again talk about nothing series specific, but more a general topic. This is concerning how we talk about cricket, how we describe cricket, and specifically focusing on the matter of luck. So there has been, a lot of scholarship and studies on the matter of luck in sports, especially recently. There have been a few books that have been out as well in the US sports space. But Karthik and Kartikeya both suggested that it will be an interesting topic to look at from the cricketing lens. Because what happens is different people view this concept of luck very differently. So if you say that this batter was lucky when he made 100, some people think that you're actually putting it down, or you are being, saying it in a pejorative term by saying, oh, okay, it was just he got away easy, or in some sense. Or some people think that some people don't understand exactly what you're trying to get at when you say that this batter had more luck than that batter, or this team had more luck than that team. And even in the World Cup final, when we were talking about Travis Head, and when we mentioned that in the initial part of the innings he had more luck, we had a few listeners commenting that you're taking away the greatness of that innings. But that is hardly the point. I mean, we are not saying that that was not a good innings or that was a bad innings or anything to that sense. But yeah, so I think it's very important to talk about skill and luck and basically the balance between the two, what we are really getting at and how we measure these things when we talk about it. So given that Karthik and Kartikeya write regularly on cricket, it would be good to hear what they have to say. So yeah, KK, maybe you can start. I think this whole thing was something that you wanted to talk about in detail initially as well.
Yeah, I mean, the luck part of it for sure. But just in general, cricket writing and how for all of its history, most of its history, cricket writing has described the game in a sort of post facto way where the outcomes shape how you judge the action, right? So the team that won, whatever it did was was brilliant, and their plans were perfect. The team that lost, the choices they made were the wrong ones, right? So that's the lens through which cricket has been viewed most of the time, and it continues to be viewed like that most of the time, whether in print or TV or everywhere. So for a while now I've been uh, trying to understand for myself, like, how uh, is there a better way to describe the game, uh, and the things the cricketers out there are doing, and is there a way to describe it and, like, get to a sort of get closer to the truth of the game, if that makes sense. And yeah, and luck is definitely like one major, like, factor in that. And I think Karthikeya will speak more about it, but luck is like, it's there, and you've got to kind of take it into consideration as well, and it's not the opposite of skill.
Yeah, Kartikeya, if you could sort of talk about this in an introductory sense and your thought of luck and how it is used to describe the game and the sort of misconceptions around luck in general.
So this is to do with cricket only, right now, not generally.
Yeah, cricket only. But if you want to go general and sort of do a contrast, yeah, go for it.
As Karthik said, the luck is not the opposite of skill. Luck is the when outcomes are more favorable than the average expectation for a set of actions, then the person is lucky or unlucky, depending on whether you want the outcomes to sort of vary in one direction or the other. So, for instance, to take like a recent example, Zach Crawley made that 189 at what was it, Old Trafford? Yeah, right, Old Trafford in the fourth test.
Yeah, I remember the innings, but I forgotten which venue and all.
Yeah, in the fourth test of the Ashes, he made 189, 182 balls. Now Crawley survived like 51 ball shots in that innings. So now it's rare for a batter to survive 51 consecutive ball shots before at least one of them resulting in a dismissal. So that means that on that day, Crawley enjoyed above average luck. It doesn't mean that on the days when Crawley gets out to his second or third fall shot, he's played worse or that he's a less skillful player. It just means that he's less lucky. The key to understanding the idea of luck in sport is to distinguish and separate actions and outcomes, because the whole point of a sport is that it's an encounter. It's neither the batter nor the bowler can decide the outcome of a delivery, right? A delivery goes for one run not because of the bowler or because of the batter, but because of the encounter. So, for like, you take a really ordinary example which happens every day, in every one-day match you watch, many times, especially against the new ball. The bowler bowls very good length around off stump, and the batter defends, and the ball catches the edge and goes to third man, and they jog one single because third man is on the boundary and there's no way to contest the single. So it's basically uncontested single. It happens maybe once an over, maybe sometimes even twice an over in the first 10-15 overs of a one-day match. Now, the bowler doesn't want to concede that one run. The batter definitely doesn't want to take that one run. But the outcome of that delivery is one run and no dismissal, right? So that has happened despite what the batter intended and despite what the bowler intended. So what has happened there? Like, it depends, right? You have, like, suppose you don't have a slip, that situation. Then you could even argue that the batter is unlucky, right? Because the batter could get a slightly more advantageous edge, and instead of going to third man, the ball will go to the boundary between the keeper and the third man. Or the bowler would get a little bit more lucky, and the edge will be even thinner, and it might go to the wicket, and the batter will be dismissed. So this cricket has this peculiarity whereby, if you miss by a lot, you're okay. And if you don't miss at all, you're okay. But if you miss in between those two extremes, then you're likely to be in trouble. So this is what sort of makes cricket interesting in a sense. It has a sort of there is a sort of a optimal amount of error which the bowler is trying to induce, right? The optimal amount of misbehavior which the bowler is trying to produce. And the batter is trying to sort of avoid that optimal thing and sort of either middle it or miss it entirely, right? So that's why you hear commentators say often, like sometimes when it's moving that much, it's better to keep playing and missing. That's the best you can hope for. So suppose it happens repeatedly, right? The batter keeps edging it and it keeps going to third man for a single. And the times when he doesn't edge it and he just plays and misses, and the ball just goes through the keeper, and there's no catch, there's no appeal, nothing, right? Suppose it happens like of all the times where the batter is challenged on that off stump, suppose it happens 15 times in a row, then there's you can make some estimate about, okay, well, you get the feeling that the batter is lucky, or you get the feeling that the bowler is unlucky, right? Now you can measure that feeling by comparing, like, well, what is the general rate at which batters are playing and missing? So if the general rate is, okay, every 7th or 8th play and miss, the batter gets out. Suppose that's the range, right? Then if on one day the batter plays and misses 15 times, the batter has been lucky. Whereas on another day, if the batter edges the second time and it goes to hand, then the batter is unlucky on that day. Now, it's not the case that the batter played worse on one day or better on another day. No, it's just that the batter, things which are beyond the batter's control are in play. That's what creates uncertainty and risk. If you sort of under some sort of, and that's what creates luck. So I think every cricket match is decided by luck. Every innings is decided by luck. The point is, in the long run, the better players have better returns, and in the short run, they don't. So I mean, this is not a way to understand it which will appeal to a lot of people. But the way to understand sort of batting, one way to understand batting is to understand each batsman as a differently weighted dice. I mean, AB de Villiers is a batter who, he's weighted a little differently from, say, I don't know, Roshan Mahanama or something like that. Right? So in the long run, they're going to end up at different means, right? So their expected returns are going to be different, or rather, their actual returns are going to be different. So then you can say, okay, how do you tell whether something is luck and something is a problem, right? So, for example, there are some things which are riskier than others, right? So, for example, if you're sweeping from the stumps, then that's really risky. Now, this happened to England, actually. In 2019 World Cup, for example, England massacred the spinners. Okay, in the England's batting, they absolutely massacred the spinners. They scored at 7 and over against the spinners, and they were dismissed once every 70 balls or something like that. It was they absolutely obliterated all the spinners. In the 2023 World Cup, they were dismissed once every 29 balls, and they scored at about 5.5 and over. So it would be one thing to say, okay, England were luckier than average in 2019, and they were less lucky than the average in 2023. But that's okay. But when it keeps happening over the course of a tournament, when you average that much over the course of a tournament, when you're getting out to every fourth false shot, you play to a spinner over the course of a tournament, right? And you're losing a wicket once every 29 balls you play to the spinner. Then you can say that, okay, this could be because of something greater than just luck, that perhaps the choices that they're making in the attacking shots that they're choosing are suboptimal. Right? They're making very high risk choices, or they're being forced to make very high risk choices, or that they're making choices which were not as high risk in English conditions as they are in Indian conditions, because in India the stumps are in play a lot more, and so the basic sort of the balance of probabilities works in favor of the spinner much more in India than it does in England. Right? So then you can sort of build out from luck and start drawing some conclusions about tactics and choices and approaches and things like that. But basically, you have to be able to separate actions and outcomes. And if you do that, it's easy to understand what luck is.
No, I think that's a great point, and the fact that you brought up the Zach Crawley, I want to take that as an example, and think about this, because this was the fourth test, and the Ashes were technically still alive at that point when Zach Crawley was playing that innings. Had England won that test, it would have been 2-2 going into the final test. So the Ashes were alive. Crawley made 189 in 102 balls. England got like a massive lead because of that in really quick time. They scored at some 5.5 runs an over.
182 balls.
Yeah, I sorry, 189 and 182 balls. And then, but, I think this, and the point that KK spoke about with the post-facto analysis, I think is interesting, because while all that you said about luck and the fall shot percentage is true, I'm trying to put myself in the position of a cricket writer covering that day of cricket, and there is almost a tendency and a sort of a inbuilt, I think, emotion to bring out the fact that this was, to sort of say it was lucky almost seems to diminish the innings at the end of that day, when actually it shouldn't. So I'm trying to understand how one can describe that innings, mention the lucky bit, but also sort of bring out the glory of the fact that it was a stupendous innings. You get what I'm saying, right, KK? The sort of the contradiction between bringing out the glory of the innings while at the same time keeping the
but you kind of put it in a nutshell yourself. You said, okay, the series was alive, and he plays these innings which, like, if not for rain and stuff, could have swung the series, right? And all of that is there, and all of that is part of the description of that innings and stuff. But the glory of it or whatever comes from, like, the accumulation of detail and stuff that you put in. The glory or the inglory of it is for the reader. Okay, yeah, of course, it's not that the writer is only, like, presenting the facts and leaving it to the reader to, like, make up their mind about, like, whether it was a good or bad innings or whatever. But the point is that all innings of that magnitude in Test cricket against a bowling attack like Australia's are, like, really good innings. But if you don't not just mention but, like, draw attention to the fact that he was so much luckier than average for a innings of that length, then you're not really doing the game any sort of justice, right? Or you're not even doing Crawley any sort of justice in a way. If it's all about, okay, he got 180 whatever, and, like, therefore all nuance has to disappear. That doesn't make sense, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that last thing that KK just said is the key bit, which is that you're not being fair to Crawley also, because if you grant the idea that he made 189, so he must have played really well, it rather begs the question, no, what the hell has he been doing for the other 36 tests? If you really believe that 189 was him playing at a level, or rather, to distinguish between actions and outcomes, that 189 was down to his actions being of an exceptionally high quality or an unusually high quality, then it begs the question, what has he been doing? in all these other games. Like in the record that I've got for Crawley, I don't have his full record, but I do have like about 900 runs of Crawley's in Test cricket, and he's been dismissed 28 times, and he's played 303 fall shots. So that's about roughly 11 fall shots per dismissal, right, on average. So but there's another distinction between which sort of Karthik just touched on, which is that it's one thing to say that Crawley played a thrilling innings, that he kept going after the bowling and he spread the field, and all of it is true. He did do all of those things, right? He kept attacking and he was relentless, all that, etc., etc. Against pace, against spin, against Hazelwood, he did this to Cummins, he did that. He kept hitting the so-and-so bowler on the rise. All of that is true. Off front foot, back foot, sometimes just, stand and deliver. All that is true. And all that is thrilling. But it's one thing to say that, right? It's another thing to say that, oh, look, they won, or oh, look, they got a very big lead. So consequently, now, with that as sort of the goal and trying to explain how the actions caused that goal, right? Then you sort of start attributing things to Crawley's innings, which are sort of basically pure chauvinism. Then that's not right, no, and that's what happens all the time. But the thing is that there's an audience for that chauvinism. So the writer is also not in a sort of an entirely comfortable place. Like at the end of the day, the writer has to write for an audience and has to keep that audience.
Yeah, and in a place like, I'm imagining like for a writer in England, there is also this sort of hidden motivation to make, write in a way that the game becomes that much more popular, right? So because it is not like the most popular sport in the land. So when you have a test like this, or a day like this, or an innings like this, there is a sort of a it is an uncomfortable place. Like on the one hand, you want to be honest and descriptive, but on the other hand, you tend to do this post facto because that is what is probably what your bosses want or what the public wants or whatever. So you feel what the audience wants. So it is an uncomfortable place. Yeah.
Very close to home, and it is like basically the example. I'm not going to let you guess who I'm going to talk about, but I think both of you can guess.
Virat Kohli.
Oh, yes. So in 2018 was the most lethal year for bowlers in Test cricket since the 1950s. Okay, the depth and quality of the average attack in 2018, the rate at which they produced wickets was, better than any year since I think 1956, which was I have a piece about this. So in that year, Kohli made 1,322 runs in 13 tests. He played a fall shot every 5.6 balls. So once every over, he played a fall shot. But he survived 16 and a half fall shots per dismissal in that year. Okay. Now, in 2020 and 21, which was basically when Kohli was in his slump or in decline or, living off his past laurels, depending on, which flavor of writer you want to read about that period. In 2020 and 21, he played 14 tests. And in those 14 tests, he made only 652 runs, which is about half of what he made in one less test in 2018. Now, he played a fall shot every 7.4 balls in those 14 tests, but he survived only 8.5 fall shots per dismissal. So his survival rate was half of what it was in 2016. But here's the thing.
2018, you mean?
2018, sorry. If you take sort of an efficiency measurement of this, right, which is that, okay, you say that he's making he's playing you have separate actions and outcomes, but ultimately the point is to score runs, no? So what is his runs per fall shot, right? And his runs per fall shot in 2020-21 is 3.3 runs per fall shot, whereas in 2018 it is 3.1 runs per fall shot, right? So purely sort of, if you want to sort of measure Kohli's batting, right, the actions that he performed, the actions in 2020-21, that period when he scored fewer runs, were actually better than they were, marginally better, admittedly, but still better than they were in 2018. But you try to point this out, and there's no audience for that right now. So, and you try to point this out. I think actually Karthik has tried to point this out at some point. I think, but I mean, and he does it with great subtlety when he discusses, like, I don't know, Kohli's 74 at Chepauk against England, or one of those innings. And because those are fantastic innings, and you could see that he was playing really well. But and this sort of systematic record which we have ball by ball bears that out. But even though the writer has seen it, and even though the record bears it out, that's reality is no place on the written page, at least in the match reports.
Yeah, I think the innings. Yeah, I think it was the Cape Town innings, 70 odd in the first innings, and basically, like, I'd written a piece on his cover drive, basically, and the idea that his cover drive had become like a problem for him and stuff, where the numbers, the data, as Kartikeya said, suggested that he was just unlucky for an unusual period of time. Couple of years, he had just been really unlucky while playing that shot and in general as well. Yeah, so, and that's the thing, like, that innings, it was a superb innings, but he only got he only got 74 or 72 or something like that. And then you try to find out, like, you try to ascribe other reasons as to why he's not scoring hundreds, because he went a really long time without scoring 100. And then you got theories that, he's not he doesn't have scoring shots off the back foot or whatever, but I mean, he does. He's a really good puller. And
come on, KK, that's not the reason they give. Okay, they give reasons like his wife is doing something.
No. But see, even I'm ignoring all of that. But even, like, even serious.
Yeah,
even
but that's genuinely funnier. I mean,
yeah, but no, even serious, like, cricketing experts were saying that, oh no, he needs to have more short options off the back foot and stuff like that. I mean, which you could make that case even when he is scoring runs, if you really want to make that case. But to focus on finding that hole in his game at a time when he isn't scoring runs is kind of disingenuous, because he was batting more or less the same way in 2021 as he did in 2018-19. So, but at some level within the audience, like, an acceptance for that sort of writing or that sort of description of the game is, at this current moment, it's not there, because, like, they're still, like, hearing all the usual kinds of post facto stuff that they always have.
No, but that's also. Is it also because batting specifically is very hard to observe? And, as you said, even people who, might. You might otherwise read, say, reasonable things, were not willing to buy this argument of the fact that he was batting similarly, but the runs weren't coming, partly because he was unlucky and getting out quicker than he was before. And also, with bowlers, if you notice, I think it's generally, at least largely, people agree when a bowler is unlucky and when he's not.
The first point first on batting. So the difference is, okay, largely if they do agree that, like, yeah, okay, say Mohammad Shami was unlucky during the 2018 England tour, which again is contested by a lot of people who would say no, he bowls a little too short to get the edge, so he's beating the bat, when another bowler might pitch it further up and get the edge. I mean, it's one way of looking at it, but the fact is that he was unlucky there, and you're right that there's a sort of larger acceptance of that. But the very definition of batting is that you're out, you're out. So you don't get to like try again and like make up for the bad luck by having a run of poor luck. A run of better luck immediately afterwards and like evening things out. So it's in the very definition of batting that like you can go through a say like Surya Kumar Yadav in that one day series last year against Australia, like 3 first ball ducks, right? And so you can't say, was he batting well, was he not, did he just happen to get some really good balls, and against those particular balls did he just happen to be unlucky? And 3 balls, and this is basically an entire series done, right? So batting can be brutal like that, and that's why I think luck just it plays such a major role in outcomes.
Yeah, and I think in terms of bowling also, like if you see Shami, right, you brought up England, but there was also this New Zealand tour when India went and lost 2-0. And Shami there too, I thought bowled really well. But it so happened that didn't end up with the kind of wickets that Saudi and Bolt and the New Zealand bowlers ended up getting. Now, the post facto analysis of that, and even for Saudi and Bolt, it was post facto because they also said later on that it took us a bit of time to figure out what speeds to bowl in these conditions, and that it helped the fact that we weren't as quick as the Indian bowlers. So they were saying that it was luck in a way that their pace worked with the conditions and with the batting. But the sort of the reverse of that is to say Shami and the Indian bowlers should have bowled slower. That's the contradiction here. It's not Saudi and Bolt are not saying that these bowlers should have bowled slower. They are saying it so happened that we benefited from these conditions because we bowl at this pace. We bowl slower than them. So, there is a distinction between saying the Indian bowlers didn't stand up when it mattered by bowling slowly. I mean, I'm just bringing the cliche here. And to say that they were in a bit of an unlucky situation where their pace worked against them.
Yeah, I mean, that tour, like, I think the biggest reason for New Zealand probably like being better over those 2 test matches was the depth of like fast bowling resources they had. So they had like 4 genuine basically in the first test they had 3 genuine fast bowlers and Colin de Grandhomme. In the second they had 4 plus de Grandhomme, and India didn't have that sort of depth. India was just playing with 4 bowlers and 3 fast bowlers and 1 spinner and stuff. So that was one reason, and Bumrah coming back from injury, Ishant Sharma missing 1 test. So all of these things kind of added up, and yeah, the fact that they bowl slower or whatever. I mean, there's such a thing as home advantage, right? And these are the sort of small. They were both really close test matches. It just so happened that New Zealand won both of them, and because the conditions were so like bowler friendly, they both ended in like 3 days, or one ended in 3 and one in 4. I don't remember. So, like in the immediate aftermath, it feels like okay, 2-0, 2-3 day finishes. This is like a a completely one-sided series. It was nothing like that. Um, so yeah, and but I don't know, the pressure of like, oh, this is such a good Indian team, they should be winning everywhere. That sort of expectation leads to this narrative of like, oh, either that they're not that good a team, or that they fail to live up to their potential, which both of which aren't true. They just happen to be a really good team in a time where there are a lot of other really good teams as well.
Yeah, I think that's the crucial point to bring out here, that when the skill levels are really high and, often approaching equal, like they have been when India went to New Zealand in that tour, or India went to South Africa, and lost 2-1 in a really close series. Last time they went to South Africa, or even when they went to England and that series. So I think when the skill levels are really high and really sort of well matched, then luck begins to have that much more of and sort of plays a role. The team for whom the good fortune goes its way tends to be better placed. I mean, it's not like West Indies of the 80s, who ended up playing teams who were not all of whom were anywhere close to as well matched as they were. So they then skill eventually was could ended up making them win quite a lot. But here, this era is different, and people don't see that, or don't want to see that.
Yeah, I think Kartikeya makes the point quite often, right? That Cummins, Hazelwood, and Stark are as good, if not better, fast bowling collective than McGrath, Gillespie, and Lee. It just so happened that that Australian team played in an era where the second best team wasn't anywhere near as good as them. Whereas now there are like 3-4 teams at any given time who are who can compete with this Australian team in most conditions.
Yeah, but I think it's generally important because I mean it's a question of what your model of the game is. No, it's a question of what you think is happening. I mean the problem is not that. I mean, everybody can see the same deliveries. No, everybody sees the batter playing and missing. Everybody sees the batter being beaten on the inside edge. Everybody sees the batter getting an inside edge on what would otherwise be a plum LBW. But the thing is that those things don't stick in memory. What sticks in memory is just very few things. That's really the problem. This is really a problem. This to reckon with luck, you have to reckon with the record. Whereas to reckon with, if you want to tell the story that you're telling, which is to pick out memorable events from the day and then spin a story that sort of stitches together those memorable events in the day. Like suppose your story of the day is, on so and so took a great catch, and then so and so dropped a catch, and then so and so made a great 95, and so was out early, caught at extra cover. Then if you take those 4 points from the match, then you cannot then go and say, well, this is due to luck. No, you have to say that, oh, well, yeah, the guy who made the 85 and the great catch, they played really well, and the guys who got out early, they didn't play well. And so, then you say, okay, well, they played well and they did play well. So why? Then, you have an open highway in front of you. You can then spin any sort of explanation for why. The problem is that the problem comes with seeing seeing what sticks in your memory and pretending that that is significant, whereas it's not. No, every ball is equally significant. This is another sort of aspect of the whole luck thing, because luck is in play every ball, and it's in play in cricket, especially since we are sort of focusing on cricket. It's in play for a very particular reason, because on every ball, the batter has at some point, when the batter facing the delivery after the ball is delivered, the batter has to commit an act of faith. The batter has to say that, okay, the ball will arrive at this point in space, at this point in time. And I am going to meet it with the bat over there, And that is a prediction that the batter has to make before the ball arrives at that point, right? And often even before the ball is pitched, especially if you're playing fast bowling, or so it is an act of faith because the ball can misbehave, after you made your guess, right? And that's why batters in form, they always say, well, they are playing late, they are arriving early, getting into position early and playing late, because the batter is doing that little thing of, committing that act of faith slightly better, with slightly greater assurance, with slightly better balance. But it's still an act of faith, no? And when you have so many bowlers who are so good, that they're going to bowl the unplayable ball every now and then yeah, even the best batters are going to get out. And what that does is it creates these second order things, where some batters start approaching the game by saying that, oh, well, we are going to get out anyway, so we might as well, play our shots and get our runs. This is why you have the other, reasoning, which you often hear, for example, Ian Chappell and all say on commentary, which is that, the worst kind of dismissal for a batter is the one where the batter is playing what is Sunil Gavaskar calls a nothing shot, which is that, even if you play that what you're attempting well, you're not going to get any runs. So if you want to get out, you might as well get out to an attacking shot, unless you're beaten in defense. So this is what creates sort of good batting and notions of good batting, which are actually good notions of good batting, So, but for that, you have to watch every ball, no? And every ball, the batter can be dismissed, and about 1 in 55 or 60 balls, the batter is dismissed. So there's sort of a roughly somewhere between 1 and 2% chance of batter being dismissed on any ball. So this idea that there are only some balls which matter and some balls which are crucial or decisive. This is just sort of this is just saying that, well, I didn't really watch most of the deliveries. I just remember what I watched, the few balls that I watched and the few balls.
No, not just that. There's also like this sort of the model of watching cricket as it's a cumulatively progressive game, right? Like, so Travis Head takes a great catch to dismiss Rohit Sharma, and there is an idea that particular event then caused a cascading effect on the rest of the the momentum, the sort of the idea of momentum, the idea of a team then succumbing because of that great catch. I mean, it's almost like every event is now going to result in, like, X is going to result in what happens in X plus 1. Or
come on, Sid, you have to admit that is a killer story plot, okay? That this is not describing cricket very well, but it is a killer story plot.
But even that's true. But the fact is that and there are, while it is alluring at some aspects, but in many cases it's a bad story device also. I'm saying in many cricket matches it's a bad story device.
No, in any cricket match it's a bad story device.
No, like, I can understand if, like, Curtly Ambrose in Perth, right, for instance, if you were to tell me that the first wicket, and then there was this cascading effect going on to the 7th wicket where he took 7 wickets for 1 run or something. If you were to say that, okay, fine, that's a good story device you have used and that's great. But that doesn't work every time, even as a story.
But even outside of cricket, that doesn't work. No, the most sort of standard thing you hear is like this whole thing about, whenever there's some absolutely heinous crime, especially in America where you have this true crime fantasy and this and that, like just now a few weeks ago you had like the 60th yearly anniversary of JFK getting shot, John F. Kennedy being shot in Dallas, and then there's a whole flurry of like psychological inquiry into Lee Harvey Oswald's childhood. So it's like, oh, he had this very weird childhood where his parents did X, Y, Z, and they were itinerant and moving, and so that caused him to become an assassin or assassinate JFK. So lots of people have that kind of childhood. Lots, and not all of them become assassins. So that causality, there's this fallacy in that causality. Okay, now you can say, okay, perhaps this has something to do with the way his thinking developed and the way his attitudes to the world developed, and that and those attitudes to the world, then something else got added into them, and then etc., 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 and then he went to Moscow and he's a socialist and communist or whatnot, and he came back, all that, etc., etc., whatever that story is, and then he shot. But that's very long, no? Then your killer plot point dies, no? It's much easier to sort of make that short form and say, oh, Kapil Dev took a great running catch with a smile on his face, and that was it. India won after that.
Yeah. That's true.
If you're going to keep this in, make sure you don't edit any of it, okay? Because otherwise, people say I'm comparing Lee Harvey Oswald to Kapil Dev, which I'm not.
I think Don DeLillo has to write that book also.
Yeah. No, but the thing about this luck, right? I mean, to get back to that point, is that there is also this aspect of, and there have been studies done on this also, about how there are different sports that have a different luck component to them. Like for instance, if you have an individual sport, like say tennis, you are probably, and you play over 5 sets. It is, I mean, obviously there are going to be lucky breaks here and there, and the player with lesser skill will win, is likely to win points, is likely to have some luck. But overall, at the end of the day, the better player will win, invariably. And you can probably say the same about Test cricket, because it goes over 5 days and a series of 5 tests. Invariably, the better team will win, or even 3 tests for that matter. But the thing is, when people talk about luck in cricket, there will be this whole comparison with, say squash. And then they will be like, no, it is, you cannot call it lucky because when I played tennis or squash or something, but that's a different game, no? That has a different skill and that has a different level. And also you probably didn't play at the highest level, so it's hard. So, I mean, it's tough to compare, I'm saying, across sports. Like, I think there's been a study that said that in American sports, of all the American sports that are played, ice hockey is much more, that needs, like, you has a bigger luck component than, say, like a basketball. Because in basketball, they take shots all the time. And so, ultimately, like, the better skilled team will do better. But in ice hockey, you don't take that many shots as much as basketball, but because it's such a fast moving fluid game where the puck just needs to deflect a bit to lose possession, you need luck. And so it's hard to do this comparison.
Yeah, I mean, which is why, I mean, like football, right? In the last decade or decade and a half, like expected goals has just become like an accepted part of like analysis now. Like, very quickly, people were like suspicious of it initially and stuff, but now everybody talks about XG. And because like ice hockey, football, soccer, like is essentially like it's a low scoring sport compared to, say, a basketball. Like fewer shots are taken and fewer goals are scored, and therefore like luck plays a much bigger role in any given match. So measures like expected goals come into it. And like cricket, in the same sense, like batting, you have 10 wickets in an innings, right? So like again, like luck comes into it quite a lot because of that. And like a batter is out, the batter is out. So the ways of like talking about the game that would account for these things and like would allow for somebody to, have done everything in their power and to the best of their skill and yet failed, to use that word. Like there needs to be like a way of talking about the game that allows for that, basically.
Yeah, the football case is actually interesting because cricket has actually a much more. I think the more I think about it, the more I think that cricket has a much more interesting, and I say interesting, but actually much more sort of complicated problem of measuring things. Because in football, you see, it's XG is actually at basically it's a really simple idea, which is that uh, it basically involves measuring just three variables, which is one is the angle from which the shot is being taken, the second is the distance from which the shot is being taken, and the third is that if you draw a triangle, from the involving the two posts and the point from which the shot is being taken, those 3 points to make a triangle, the number of players who are in that triangle, those are the three sort of variables in basically to do XG. So whereas cricket has this optimality problem, no, which is that you miss by a little bit, you're okay, but sorry, you miss by a lot, you're okay, and you don't miss by much at all, and you're okay, but in between you're dead, basically. So the point is that in both the sports, in football and in cricket, luck plays a role, but it plays a role only in part because sort of the events are rare. Because really, in football, you also have teams which are taking like 22 shots or 25 shots in 90 minutes, and then you have teams which are taking like 4 shots in 90 minutes. Or who are kept down to 4 shots in 90. That's a big range over a 90-minute period. Right? That's like one shot every 22 minutes versus one shot every 3 or 4 minutes. So that's a big range. Even in cricket, now every ball the bowler can get a wicket. So it's not like the opportunities to take wickets are rare. But the point is that luck comes in because the bowler doesn't control what happens and the batter doesn't control what happens. At some point in the encounter, both lose control. Both have to give up control. And that's what creates that luck. That's what creates that uncertainty.
No, and one thing, Kartikeya, all this that you're saying is predicated on the notion that the players largely are the same and that they play the same, but then some days things go their way, some days things don't. Some days they, their risk, their sort of analysis and calibration of risk is better than other days, right? But that all that cannot compete when somebody else has the notion that says no, there are some players who raise their game in some games and don't play as well in other games. So then that it's hard to sort of compete. How do you explain this to them when you say that Travis Head in the World Cup final became a different player because it was a World Cup final and not because he had various things going his way?
I don't think you can explain this to them. I don't basically, and I think Karthik is right that you can't really explain this to them because there are, every time you try to explain this to them, there are 15 other newspaper reports and website reports and podcasts and match recap videos and all, which will casually, as a matter of course, say Travis Head big match player. And as if and that whole big match player thing was said as though everybody knows what it means and its meaning is clear and absolutely uncontroversial. Whereas a big match player is basically total nonsense. There is no such thing. So you can't compete with it, frankly. And the way to compete with at least you can't compete with it until you have some sort of numerical parity between the whole sort of big match player nonsense and sort of the actual descriptions, which account for, luck and, things like that.
I mean, Travis Head's big match ability is right now predicated upon two innings in 1 year, both of which involved uh, an unusual amount of luck, like in the World Test Championship final and in the World Cup final. And which does not mean that he's not a good player. He's a fantastic player. He's an outstanding batter who on his day will like destroy any attack, and they happen to be his days. But yeah, those two innings, uh, you know, it just so happened that he happened to have enjoy that kind of luck on those two major occasions, and well done to him for that. But you can't like I tweeted about this, that basically early in his innings in the World Cup final he got beaten multiple times by especially Jasprit Bumrah, and he was sort of like stuck in the crease. His feet were not moving, and he just kind of poked at the ball like 2-3 times in 1 over against Bumrah and missed both. And Shreyas Iyer played the exact same shot against Pat Cummins, more or less, and edged it, and he was out for 4 on the same day. So, this is the nature of batting, and but because it's a World Cup final, because there are like so many more eyeballs on this game, because there are so many more people writing on this game and talking about it, there's going to be a lot of unfair extrapolations made from how their respective days panned out, about like Shreyas Iyer's ability, about Travis Head's ability, about their mental strength or lack thereof, so many things. So it's essentially like the way cricket is spoken about by the majority of the people who talk about it. It's damaging. It's like it's you're not, like, you're basically disrespecting every player, everyone out there who's trying to make a living from the game or whatever. You're disrespecting all of them by talking about the game in this way.
Yeah, but also, I mean, the thing that I realized is that, and I don't follow this, but I really should, which is that you can't really reason with this. You can point out the absurdity, like this whole thing about you said, the whole thing is predicated on a sample size of 2 innings. And I mean, how can you have a lot of big match innings? That's a contradiction in terms. No, that the whole point of this big match is that it's very, very rare. Once in a blue moon you play a big match. So then, you can't really ever have evidence of a big match. And actually, if you look at for whatever evidence there is, you find that as the number of finals and stuff a player plays increases, their record in finals sort of starts matching up with the overall record. They converge, and that's not surprising. No, it's the same players, the same opponents, the same rules, the same ground, same everything. Why would it not converge? We did a whole thing about this before with one of what's his name, Abhinav. If you remember, City.
Abhinav Mukund, yeah.
So I think basically that it sort of comes from a place of bad faith, this whole big match thing. And it's not really a description of a game. It's sort of an expression of anguish, that my team lost, and someone did me in. That's what it is. That's what it really means, this whole thing, that so and so is a big match player, our guy is not a big match player. But what does that mean? That basically means that someone has done me in as the viewer or as the fan. And that I think requires a different kind of response rather than saying, oh well, the big match player, there's no such thing as a big match player, they're wrong. And that we can keep saying generally because it's true. But I think in response to someone who says, oh, the big match player is probably it's not really responding to what the actual anguish is over there, even though what they're saying is that, oh, Travis Head is a big match player, your guy doesn't have any big match chops or whatever it's called.
Yeah, and also and also Steve Tignor, the tennis writer, a really good tennis writer, he once pointed out that there's this whole thing of Nadal and Djokovic and all being big match players, and he was pointing out the absurdity of it because in a Grand Slam, if you lose one match, you're out. So every match is a big match. So what are you talking about, big match player? Like first round, if you lose, you're out, right? So basically, he's saying Djokovic has to win every single match, and so every match is a big match. So yes, he's a big match player in that way. But don't bring in this thing saying he's good in finals and all. He's good, like he cannot lose. That's the structure of the Grand Slam.
So every game is a final, basically. I mean, literally, it is a final.
Every game is a final. So the absurdity of big match player in a sort of a knockout structured sport is absurd. So, what? So, I mean, of course.
In tennis, there's this whole thing about, this Nadal and Federer and Djokovic. On the key break points, they're really great. And it turns out they're not. They win break points at about the same rate as they win every other point. I mean, what it is, the score at the start of a point is an indicator of how well the two players are playing at the start of that point. Okay, so for instance, I think I have this published somewhere. The Federer, I think, wins about 54% of all his points, and he wins about 52% of all his break points. Now, what that means is that in the games where he happens to face a break point, his opponent is playing slightly better than his average opponent. That's what that data means. It doesn't mean he plays worse. There's this the part of sort of understanding luck and part of understanding uncertainty and part of understanding this whole concept that in any competitive sport or any sport which involves a competition, the contestants at some point have to concede control. That they have to make their play and then hope for a good outcome. This business, this basic sort of cycle, if you ignore, then you can sort of watch only one player and pretend that you're watching the whole game. Competitive sport is at least a two-body problem. No, it is not a one-body problem. It is always at least a two-body problem.
No, one thing that strikes me about cricket, right, is that many people are happy to concede the idea of luck when it comes to things before they actually play the game. Like, for instance, selection. People are happy to concede that somebody was lucky to be selected or unlucky to be selected. They're also happy to concede that somebody was unlucky to be picked for a really hard foreign tour. And while if they had started their career playing a home series, for instance, maybe they could have had their journey could have been different. So in all those senses, people are happy to concede. Like, for instance, if some player wakes up in the morning and then goes to the ground and plays, like Rohit Sharma played football, right, on the day he was supposed to debut, and poor guy got injured and didn't debut. I mean, I think people are happy to concede that is a bit of silliness, but also a whole lot of bad luck. But when it comes to the actual game, when it comes to actual performances, the luck becomes like a bad word. That's the sort of dichotomy of between describing what happens outside the game and describing what happens while the actual game is happening.
Yeah, I mean, and the irony is that, like, I don't know, say like a freak injury happens and like, I don't know, Glenn Maxwell falls off a golf cart or something. I don't know exactly what happened to him, but it involved a golf cart, right? Yeah. I mean, that's a situation where Maxwell technically has a little more control, and not the exact event that happened, but of choosing to play golf that particular day before a match or whatever. But like, in a match, you're facing like a 90 miles per hour, like fast bowler, ball deviates, like 0.15 degrees when you maybe accounted for 0.12, I mean, whatever, right? And this is completely like out of your control. Like very little of it is in your control. So the luck there should be easier to understand, right? In so many ways. But it isn't. Like because like Kartikeya says, like I mean we all grow up watching cricket as a, at least I did for sure, like as a partisan thing, right? When your team is bowling, you're watching the guy who's bowling, and the batter is sort of incidental there. And more so when your team is batting and when you're watching uh, the batter so intently that like sometimes you don't even realize who's bowling like much of the time. Like I'm talking about like your early cricket watching and stuff. Now to kind of like zoom out a little bit and take in the fact that there are two people in action at that given point in time, and that there's a lot that is beyond the control of both these people on any given ball. To come to that understanding itself, like it just seems to take a lot more effort, like uh, for a lot of people for whatever reason.
Yeah, Sidvi, I don't know what friends you hang out with, but the friends I hang out with, they don't ever think that, these illnesses, injuries, and all are free things. They always think in terms of sajish.
Okay.
Conspiracy. That is the proper God's honest truth way of looking at all this stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure. I mean, somebody, I remember that semi-final, right? I mean, they were when Shubman Gill, World Cup semi-final, when Shubman Gill had to go off because of dehydration. My first instinct was, I mean, what bad luck. I mean, guy, he had 100 for the taking there, and a poor guy had to go off. But then there were people, I log into Twitter or X as it is called now, and people are saying this is an unfit guy, he should never be playing and all. I'm like, are you serious? You know, calling him an unfit guy just because he got dehydrated?
Setting kia, isn't that what they say?
Yeah.
I think there's a sort of sliding scale, right? From like fixing conspiracy theorist to all the way to the other end of the spectrum, which would be like, every ball is significant and like luck plays a significant role and all of that. Like in that like spectrum, somewhere there's like this person who is your target audience, right? And like I think there isn't so much of a difference between like a conspiracy theory that a match was fixed and like someone casually questioning the technique, or forget the like the selection of yeah, I mean, whatever the ability, whether like the skill attributes or whatever else of a player who happened to not make a significant contribution in a big match that was lost. So
just say it plainly, no, Karthik.
Yeah.
It is the one word from the Mexican Spanish language that everybody in English knows.
Yeah, absolutely. So between like questioning if an entire match was fixed to like questioning the wisdom of selecting somebody who for their lack of cojones, there's not that much of a difference. Is what I'm saying, and
you're right. The difference is purely aesthetic.
Yeah. Whereas, so, but we're able to sort of dismiss, the outlandish end of the conspiracy spectrum, but like the fight to like, fight against this other kind of conspiracy that, this person doesn't deserve to be playing, this person lacks the skill and the balls and whatever else they're required to play, a World Cup final or whatever. The fight to uh, uh, to the fight against the person who propounds these theories is much harder, and it's so much more prevalent as well.
No, I'm saying that there doesn't seem to be like a sort of a base acceptance that if two teams are playing the World Cup final, or if two teams are playing like the World Test Championship final, or even Test cricket for that matter, which is a very, very high level, there doesn't seem to be a base acceptance that these are like extraordinary players. And that, what could happen on that one game between these two extraordinary sides is because of so many factors. So that base acceptance is not there. It's almost like, yeah, who is this fool playing in the World Cup final? Like, come on, man.
Yeah, I mean, like selection in general is just talked about in uh, like terrible ways, right? Like basically, the fact that you can only pick a squad of 15 and then only pick 11 of them at a time, which means that like a lot of really good and deserving players are going to be left out, because in any given country, even even the 10th best team in the world is going to have good players missing out on selection, and that's a fact of how cricket works and how sport works. But like, but it's still spoken about in this way that, oh, this person should have been there, this is why they lost, because they picked this person instead, as if the selectors have this crystal ball where they know, okay, this person, if they had been picked, would have scored 43 on that day, and this person would have scored 28, but we went with the 28 guy anyway. So it's just lazy, and a lot of cricket writing caters to that lazy audience, and that it's
No,
frustrating.
and one of the things that actually, if one were to feel disturbed by the excessive chauvinism in play and by the excessive level of partisanship, and all that happened that during the World Cup with the crowds and the heckling, the booing, and all those incidents that came to light. If you are truly disturbed by it, then just looking at it as a game and looking at it as two sets of extraordinary players playing, and then chance having its say, bits of fortune here and there, lots of skill here and there. I mean, that's a much easier way to remove that whole layer of chauvinism, right? I mean, so it's actually like it lowers the temperature so much more than viewing the game through this partisan lens. So that I think it could be, there could be pockets of sort of people like you, in fact, like the two of you who have taken this up, who could maybe influence even a handful of people to look at the game this way. But on the larger scale, with the economics at play, TV and everything else, I think chauvinism is what sells. So it's very hard to sell this line of viewing.
Yeah, I mean, there's an example of this, right? Like of, uh, say, Sanjay Manjrekar after the World Cup final made a valid point. Maybe made it in a newspaper column where the space only allowed him to be like fairly not go into the nuance of it as much as he could have, say, in a website or any place where he could have written something longer. But he made the point that the conditions, the toss played a really crucial role in the final, and he was not wrong. But the reception to what he wrote was like across the board, like how dare he, or not so much how dare, but like, oh, he's just making excuses for India, or like, you know, you're diminishing like what Australia did. No, I mean, it was a valid point. And the like the fact that it came after India lost and Australia won a very emotional final doesn't change the fact that the toss did play a fairly vital role in that game. So, like, when even a former player and an expert who's on TV, who's, you know, even even when that person makes this point, the reception is like completely negative usually, right? So it's a fight for Sanjay Manjrekar. So it's a much bigger fight for people who haven't played the game to talk about the game in this way.
Yeah, but there's a basic asymmetry there, no? Which is that if you're espousing something like a conspiracy theory, where you say that something is true, and the sort of the evidence you have for it being true is that that it's true, and then and the pattern is sort of very easy to detect. Someone says something is true, and then when you ask them, well, how do you know it's true? Like, for example, let's take the example of selection or something. Now that that there's some. How do you know that this thing you said happened? They say, no, you tell me why it didn't happen. This is sort of the tell that it's a conspiracy theory rather than a sort of an evidence-based thing. Whereas if you want to say, like, oh, all 600 balls are equally competitively significant, then someone asks, well, how do you know that? Well, that you say, well, it's because the way the law works. The laws of cricket say that the outcome of every ball will be counted, and the outcome of all the runs will be added up, and all the wickets will be added up, and all the balls will be added up. And when 50 overs are over in the one-day game, the innings is over. That's what it says. It says every ball is to be counted equally. It doesn't say that, if the sixth ball of the over and you hit a six, it counts double. It doesn't say that. If it said that, then the sixth ball would be much more important. But it isn't. You can hit a six on any ball, and it counts equally as 6 runs. So every ball is equally competitively significant as a matter of law. You have to give this explanation. Whereas the whole sort of, it's a conspiracy theory, or it's a plot against such and such player, or such and players from such and such state, or, it's some, cojones related defect, or it's some,
No, I think it's a battle between description and explanation, right? So what you are trying to say and what you're focused on is describing what happened, but the general audience is for the explanation for why it happened. And very often the people doing the explanation are ill-equipped to even explain why it happened.
But they're not seeking an explanation of why whatever happened. They're seeking an explanation for why the result went the way it did. And those are two different things. No, I mean,
Yes.
So
why India lost, or why Shreyas Iyer got out that way? Not. Yeah.
I mean, right? So, like, we are in an age where, like, every player in every press conferences talks endlessly about processes, right? All the time. And you would think some of that has seeped into, like, the people who are watching, who are like, okay, fine, it's about the process, and the outcome is not really in the player's control. But the that gap is still there, and it's still vast between people not just watching it, but like talking about it, and the people who are playing it, and the game that they are experiencing, the game that they are respectively experiencing.
No, but there's also like a selective sort of acceptance of some things that the players say and rejection of the other things they say. Like a player will come and say that, on this day, we raised our game, and that will become like headline news. But a player also says we are focused only on the process and not on the result. That is like, okay, some, useless thing he's saying. Same thing, Pat Cummins came and said, somebody asked him about, the Australian way and all, and he said, I have no idea what that means. And, an Australian way is like, that doesn't make it as big as, say, Steve was saying, Australianism is what, the wearing the baggy green makes you play a certain way, so that's a selective rejection and acceptance of players' words.
Yeah, because it's a better story. No, mental disintegration is a better story than we just try to play one ball at a time.
Yeah. That's true. And then again, it's the audience. So the audience, you're sort of trying to please an audience because you think that is what they want. Yeah.
Yeah, because we live in a sort of a tyranny of narrative. No, I mean, nothing else is possible. Everything has to be a story. Everything has to be sort of in 3 acts, so to speak. And things. It's very hard to write a description of a cricket match in 3 acts, because cricket matches do not occur in 3 acts. So this is a real problem. I mean, okay, I can sort of imagine, that you can write something like, the fielding captain brought the spinner on early in the 7th over, and this, you can think of this as sort of, Chekhov's gun. And then but your problem then is that about like 3/4 of the time, the gun doesn't actually fire in cricket, no, because the guy doesn't get a wicket. Only occasionally the guy gets a wicket. So you can't really sort of tell that story. Then you have to do something else. No, I mean.
No, then you have to go the reverse. Then, see, the thing is, then you go the reverse. If the gun doesn't fire, you blame the captain for the gun not firing. If the gun fires, you praise him for the gun firing.
Yes, and then you mix metaphors and you say, well, the horse is already bolted.
Yeah.
That's another thing, right? Like, it's, again, the fact that, like, any choice that a captain or a bowler or a batter makes, they know that it can come off or not, right? And that the other choices they could take on that given ball or that over have that same issue that they could come off or not. So, like, why didn't he have like a third slip there? Okay, so which fielder do you move out to put at third slip, and how does that affect the way the bowler bowls, the bowler's line and length, and like, by having a third slip and say nobody at mid wicket, then the bowler ends up bowling too wide of the stumps, and the batter's like, okay, I'll just leave everything, and then then you bring in the mid wicket, take out the third slip, and like the bowler's line like magically like shifts to like perfect fourth stump, gets the edge, and the ball flies through the gap where third slip used to be. So how do you describe that while sympathizing with both the bowler, the captain, and whoever was involved in that entire play? Like, that's the challenge, right? It's much easier to just say, oh, the guy drew the edge, but the captain had just taken third slip out. So the captain, was a buffoon.
Yeah. That is the hard part. It's like, the whole trying to simplify things by saying very facile stuff is what reduces this whole complex process that you just spoke about into like one decision by the captain, when in fact the choices are by multiple people at multiple times of the over or play the session. So yeah, I mean,
captaincy is a great sort of facet of this whole, I've been calling it conspiracy theorizing all the time, but it's probably not fair to call it that. But this need for, the illusion of control to be maintained, that, the winner won because, they had the game, they made all the right decisions because they had some, secret premonition that these were the right decisions, or that they're just superior human beings and that they therefore were able to, deduce what the right decisions were and what the correct responses were all the time, and that's why they won. That's how you get to sort of, well, the winners did everything right and the losers did everything wrong.
That line of thinking about captaincy, I think is still okay at a lower level where if the disparity between the teams is very large, then you can say that there are times in which you can sort of plot out the batter pretty easily because their skill level is anyway low, and so you make these decisions. But to talk about that at the international level where the skill is so high and teams are often very closely placed is obviously post facto reasoning.
Yeah, but it's post facto reasoning for a simpler reason. No, I mean that there are decisions made all the time. I mean, if you ignore all but the ones which you remember, then you're not really describing what the captain has done. No, so you're just sort of remembering the things that you think worked, and you're saying that because you remember them and because they work, they were really important. But that's almost certainly not true about the why the result was the way it was. I mean, the point is that all this sort of this illusion of control gives an account of the game which is wrong. I mean, that's the point. And that's why it needs to be changed. It is not it's not purely a question of it being chauvinistic. Because I would have no problem with a chauvinistic explanation if that chauvinistic explanation was actually true. Like if it was really, really true, that Steve Waugh, they used to stand and stare at the batsman from extra cover, and the steadiness of his gaze only made the batsman forget to move his feet. Then yeah, if there was evidence for that was happening, then yeah, at least that would be true. No, that would be worth saying that yeah, this is happening. But there isn't any evidence for that. No, I mean Steve Waugh had McGrath and Vaughan, and the opposition didn't. That's why they won.
Yeah, so you're saying illusion of control as opposed to accepting that there are a large number of uncertainties that players have no control over, and then luck plays a role in.
It's not a question of me saying it. No, it's true. No, which ball in cricket is entirely determined by the batter. Even full tosses produce wickets. No.
Maybe one of those balls that bounces twice and goes to the batter, and it's maybe one of those. Yeah.
You can still swing and miss horribly.
Yeah.
It's not given that you're going to or you can plop it to the guy at square leg or whatever. I think that there's an analogy people use it was like a chess game and stuff, right? For various sports, when it gets very tactical or when it appears to be more tactical than normal, people say, it was like a chess game, right? But 4D chess, right? Yeah, but to conflate, I think people do fall into the trap of conflating that analogy with reality, right? Which is that chess is a turn-based game. In this turn, however long I take, however long I take with given how much time I have on the clock or whatever, I'm in control of my move, right? I move knight to c3 and there's nothing the opposition can do during that turn to prevent that. Now, in chess, you can do that. But cricket is not a turn-based game, but it's often described as one, right? Oh, this was a 12th stump ball that Kohli chased after, and but it's not the same. It's not the bowler has pulled out a card from a deck saying 12 stump ball, 5.6 meters from the stumps in length or whatever, and then Kohli picks out another card and lays it down saying, okay, I play a cover drive. No, that's not how it works. But the way we, even I, often describe the action is to turn it into like a turn-based sport, and it's not. And like it's very easy, especially like with slow motion and stuff, to fall into that trap.
And I think it's even more pronounced with setups, right? Like, so he bowled this ball that 3 balls that went
Yeah.
away and 1 ball that came and that got him. So that's like has a feel of chess where you're basically
Yeah.
moving 3 pawns and sort
Yeah.
of blindsiding the opponent and then eventually getting
Yeah.
a checkmate or something. So
The bowler may have used that same combination like 4 times before that in the same spell, and the batter might have played out that incoming ball perfectly, or like not perfectly, but like uh, played it out, and like not gotten out to those balls, and then tried known that the incoming ball was coming, but still like made enough of an error of judgment for the ball to beat the inside edge and get him LBW. But then you only focus on those 4 balls and make it about that setup, as if like the batter was clueless in that one instance. So that's a lie about the game. The better team may or may not win, and like on those moments and like things like so much hinges in the popular imagination. And like to come back to like, and it can have real world implications in terms of how it affects players' careers and like things like that. And if there's like, among all the good things about this Indian team is that the team management and selectors are like, they completely disregard what's written about them or spoken about them in the wider world, right? And so like selections and things just happen based on whatever their expertise tells them. But it's not quite the case, and it doesn't appear to be quite the case in like other boards, which seem to be not so impervious to like external criticism and stuff. And you see like players not getting that length of like that run of games to like prove themselves or whatever, and like frequent like changes of captaincy and things like that. And the way we talk about cricket has an implication on the decisions made as well, to greater or like lesser extents, you know uh, across the cricket world. So yeah, I don't know, there is a certain responsibility to try. Obviously there's no like you know it's almost impossible to like write the perfect analysis of a game or whatever, but the effort to like try your best to understand it in a way that isn't that doesn't necessarily conform to like preset narratives, it's, I think that's very important if you want to like write about cricket or like uh, commentate on it or talk about it in any way. And yeah, that's, I think, the basic point that I've been wanting to make.
I don't know whether the storytelling aspect needs to necessarily be seen as a complete opposite of what we're talking about. And yeah, Kartikeya is right. You can still tell good stories in a cricket match without, necessarily going like completely into the realm of sort of second guessing and making up like attributing aspects to why things happened without having any evidence for it and so on. But I think there can still be an element of storytelling that comes in, and KK does it well, and there are other people who do it well also. Osman is a good writer. Monga is a good writer. So they do it. There are people who have shown that it's possible to, be engaging in a story-like fashion, make the game interesting as a story, while at the same time staying true to the fact that it's a game. So I think it's possible, but I think it also needs a lot of seriousness and a lot of appreciation of what one is watching, and a lot of respect for the players and their craft and what they're putting through, and also a lot of observation. You can't just write these things by winging it. I mean, that doesn't happen. It needs a lot of observation day after day and thinking about the game, obviously speaking to people about it and learning about it every day, but also like considering what one has written and being very specific on the words one uses and the phrases and the style of describing something and fine tuning as you go along. Obviously, what KK would have written in say 5 years ago, he would have fine tuned to a point where he is now, which he will then fine tune going forward. So yeah, I think it's a long process, and I think not that many people treat the whole writing process with as much care as they should. Hopefully, this is again, of course, part of a series of other podcasts we have done on narratives and pressure and luck and skill and things. Luck, of course, this is our first time we are focusing on it, but we touch upon it all the time, and so hopefully people who listen to us, the few people who listen to us, will appreciate what we are saying. Again, this is not to put down anybody who looks at the game in any other way, but this is just a way to say that there is a way to, remove a layer of chauvinism from it and to actually appreciate what is going on. And it's not that bad, honestly. It's not like the game becomes any boring or anything because of it. In fact, the game becomes far more interesting if you look at it in matter of skill and luck and why things happened and how things could have been different if only like something had changed and so on. So yeah, thanks so much KK and KD for joining. This was great as usual. Always a pleasure to chat with you two. And we'll be back in about a week or 10 days time. We have a series in South Africa coming up. I'm sure we'll have a preview and then also talk about the tests. And we will please rate and review our podcast as ever. And also you can buy some of the books we've republished, including War Minus the Shooting, Cricket Beyond the Bazaar, and The Summer Game the third one by Gideon Hay. And I'll put links to all of them. Thanks, KK. Thanks, KD. And good night.
India have won the series. They're going to get back for two. India home. Lords goes wild.